I'm so sorry. My phone is really rubbish and old, and it just overheated. So I've put an ice pack behind it now, so hopefully keep it cold. Hi, sorry I'm back. I'm just going to keep repeating myself until you come back. I think my phone overheated. It's a really old phone. Well, it's not really old, but it's pretty old. It's an iPhone 7, and it's pretty smashed. So I think it overheated. So I've got a ice pack. I'll show you. I've got an ice pack that I've put behind it to hopefully keep it cool. So fingers crossed. Right, let me get Claude back on. If it will let me. Okay, take two, not 4. Take 2. Hopefully this will work. Hi, sorry about that. Sorry.
That's no problem. Technical issues.
Do you know what? Normally my phone, it always overheats whenever I do anything like any recording, any lives or anything like that. But normally it gives me at least half an hour before it does that, and it seems to have just done it within like 5 minutes. So hopefully if I can keep it stable, it'd be okay. Okay, so where were we?
So where I left, pardon?
Sorry, you tell me where you left
So
off.
yeah, where I left off was on the fact of that where I was talking about the HCP plan. What has happened and what I've experienced is that paperwork within the HCP plan that is very vital has been edited, and these are the things that I've looked at where the local authority, they don't have anyone who watches over them to make sure that the child is being delivered within their education. Then what happens is that entertains failings within the school or the placement, not knowing what the student requires. Then you've also have the issue of money.
Do they not have, so you're saying that there's no sort of overseeing governing body that makes sure that they're conforming to certain standards of practice?
Yes.
Okay. Right, okay. And this is just for SEN students?
This is for SEN students from my point of view, and it's been a factor that's been going on for several years now. And what one of my ideas is within the Claudes SEN Law is for somebody to watch over them. So of course, parents who have neurodiversity students, children and young adults who basically would understand the factor of what they require and also be the voice for those families, because there is no voice for them. And the fact,
so obviously I have a daughter that's in school. She's in high school at the moment. She's in her second year of high school, and she has a SEN worker in schools. For anybody that's outside the UK, SEN stands for Special Educational Needs. But I find that they're very difficult to get hold of, not very good at communicating with the parents themselves to discuss what they're putting in place, what they're implementing. And if sometimes I find that even if you have a child that's neurodivergent, that you don't always get told about the SEN worker within school. You're not even informed that there is a SEN worker in school, or you might get one email introducing themselves to you and then you don't hear from them again. There's no sort of meetings, there's no follow-ups. It's very standard basic practice as well, the things like timeout cards and things like that, but there's no discussion with other teachers in school, with the parents. There's no collective. I think I think that's what you're getting at, isn't there? There's no kind of
very much so,
body of
very
people,
much so.
And children are just kind of left to fight for themselves, aren't they?
Very much so. And also there's a factor where there's a number of adults now who who've got neurodiversity, but however, they've not been diagnosed. So there's a big, you could say, mar within the diagnosis of dyslexia, ADHD, or any of the neurodiversity traits that a young adult or a person may have, and they don't really know that they could have more additional help, or they could have the help that they need, that when they're in that exam, they don't feel that they have to struggle. When they're in a school environment, they have assistant, they have someone who understands them. And of course, that's where I find that, like what you said, I think those areas need to be improved. And I feel that qualifications, of course, for qualified teachers, I found that qualified teachers is a invisible thing at the moment. There's like teachers that are not really aware of the neurodiversity teaching and the way of how our brain is different in taking in information. We need it repetized. We don't need it where it's like, you could say, the standard kind of systematic learning that is currently.
Yeah, and I would agree, because obviously I know that there are schools that are equipped for children with disabilities, but they tend to be the more severe disabilities, the ones that need a lot of additional help, and it's very difficult to get your child a placement in one of those schools. But on the flip side of that, I feel that I want my daughter to be able to attend a mainstream school. I want her to be able to have friends that aren't neurodivergent. I want her to be able to fit into society, but I want her to have the support to be able to do that, because we have to live in the same world as everybody else, whether you're neurodivergent or not. By segregating them, I almost feel like you're being put in a box, you know, that.
And to even answer that question, I think it's so important that it isn't like you have to either go 100 or you go one down of the spectrum, because the factor is they are schools that cater for people who just have dyslexia and dyspraxia. And those schools, they try and convert them to schools that are either turned into academies, or they're either the factor that those schools don't really get promoted to the neurodiversity families or to the young adults. Because I went to a school, for example, in Pearbright, and it was catered for students that had neurodiversity, but not on that severe spectrum. So as you could say, like the schools that you found, where I was at that experience where I thought, because my primary was severe autism, and they had a unit. And of course, they feel to put us in this unit because they feel that we may not be ready to see the bigger world. But there is those schools that are catered for within people who have dyslexia and dyspraxia. And this is where the funding needs to come into place, because they struggle, they don't have the funding, they don't have the support that they could require. And there needs to be that understanding where there is that middle ground. There isn't the case where you go like either 100 where it's severe, or it's either one where it's like.
I totally agree, because I feel like there is those schools that are there, and the government says, well, we've got these schools that are there for severely disabled children, but we're talking children that may need help going to the toilet, that may need help being fed, you know, that have very difficult daily needs that wouldn't work in a mainstream school. But to put a child like me or yourself, for example, who aren't that severe in that environment, I think could have a negative effect, because you're then growing up in this world where everybody, you know, has these severe additional needs, and you don't fit in there either, you know, because your needs aren't as you know, severe. I keep saying the word severe, but as theirs. All we need is that additional, you know, to be able to live and work in society, rather than segregating us from what the, you know, I hate the word normal population, as they would see it, I guess. Give us the additional support that we need to help the way that our brains work, so that we can succeed in this world, so we can succeed in schools. Because I find that although there is more support now for those who are on the autistic spectrum, ADHD is definitely not supported in schools. They have very little understanding. Teachers are not trained. Their perceptives of ADHD are very old-fashioned. It's very stigmatized. It's that typical boys acting out, being hyperactive in classroom. So that's what they look out for. They don't look out for the girl in the back of the class that's struggling with anxiety and too afraid to say, I don't know what to do, and I've zoned out and I've missed the first half of the lesson, and now I'm just going to be staring at an empty piece of paper, and then I'm going to get told off because I haven't done any work because I was. Do you see what I mean?
I fully understand, and this is why I think that campaigners and activists think that the government seem to always blind eye the actual factors of what we have to face each day. Discrimination, the factor that we have to also face that they do more for autism children. We don't have a problem with them, but we want the same equal rights in the fact of that it's about education. And I think that's the importance. If we educate the government and if we educate other people who don't know about neurodiversity and tell them that it's not a label, it's a factor of a quality that is a talent and it's an ability that we learn in a different way. We've been given a gift. And that importance of getting that word out there and educating the millions and telling them of how important it is so vital. And this is why when you got people like Gavin Williams, who unfortunately doesn't seem to have a clue about how to deliver an education, it's so important to give him an idea, and also I think saying the call of the serious action that we need, because it's the fact of that we've been time after time and years after years we've been treated like the invisible nation. And there is a big So and that's where I want to bring the change, and that's what the Claudes SEN Law is about. And it's also making acknowledgement for new homelessness as well, the importance of that.
Yeah, because I think, if we were able to have that extra support so that we could channel ourselves better within the educational system. A lot of people with ADHD are very entrepreneurial because we prefer to work for ourselves on our own time frames. And because we have the ability to be more flexible and things like that. So actually what they perhaps should be doing is encouraging perhaps a more entrepreneurial route, things about how to start up a new business, things about searching for suppliers. All those kinds of things are not taught in schools. You're not taught in school to be an entrepreneur. They don't want you working for themselves. They want you working as another cog in the big system, basically. And if you don't fall by if you don't sort of meet their standards of being a productive member in the working class society, then you basically get left by the wayside. We would be able to thrive so much more in schools if we were just given that understanding, that flexibility, freedom to be creative, and
the importance. I think what is so important as well is that, like for myself, I've always found that there's been a barrier, or there's been an issue where, because of myself as being young and black and male, and then also having neurodiversity, it seemed like I think they find us as a threat, but on another hand we can teach them. And of course it's important that, like for myself, I was out of education for 8 years already previously, and then now I'm out of education for 4 years, and there's been that issue where I've been in more court cases than education. And to think that even my social circle really hasn't been able to kind of progress properly is quite crazy. But that's what it says in my book as well, that it's on my page and it can be found on my Instagram, that it was the 1 year anniversary, by the way, on Monday. And you can all feel free to read it and purchase. But that's what I found. There's always been a barrier. There's always been that thing of not making us have the opportunities. Provide more of a better, different way of learning maths, a different way of learning English, and these ways of old subjects that could be more broken down. There's strategies where you can you can break down the coloured of the assignment. You can even repetize it several times. And there is strategies out there that can be accommodated for us. And these are the things that we will educate the government and call for action.
I think there are some really good teachers out there. My daughter's school, there is one science teacher in particular she's amazing. You know, she does, but a lot of her classes are very much hands-on. So, for example, it's all about different tastes, different textures. You know, for example, they did this lesson on dehydration, which is something that I think a lot of us probably experience. And what she did, and I don't mean to be crude, but this was part of the science lesson. She had different glasses of water. Well, not water, but she had like
liquid or solutions.
Different liquids which you could drink. And it was like apple juice, cherry juice and stuff like that, and it was basically you had to kind of pair up how dehydrated were you at what stage, based on your urine. But it was obviously different, and I just thought it was a really good idea because it's visual, and trying to get the children to drink it, even though it's apple juice, they were like, no, I'm not drinking that, because it's obviously psychologically they're like thinking it's something, you know, something else. But and it's those kind of lessons that I would have loved to have partaked in as a child in school, because it's visual, it's funny, it gets the whole class talking, it's really interactive, and I don't think that's just for neurodivergent children. I think that would work for every child.
Yes, it's interesting for other people to experience what a different way of learning is, because they may even find it a bit more easier as well themselves. So
you're more likely to remember, aren't you? You're going to go home, you're going to talk about it to your parents, you're going to say, guess what we did today, mum and dad, or, you know, mum and mum, dad and dad, whichever one. You know, we had to drink different types of urine. They'd be like, what do you mean? And it's like, oh no, it's actually apple juice, but it was disgusting, but it wasn't, but it was this. You know, you just get that kind of feedback. If you're just reading from a textbook, copying it down off a board, none of that is going in for some. It just isn't. There's not enough sensory interaction for our brains to process that. You know,
speaking of that, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but speaking of that,
no, carry on.
I think it's quite concerning that even the facilities that some students have to study in is quite, for a modern day 21st century world that we're supposed to be living in, the environments that we learn in are not that great. And this is where you think, like, what has really happened and where the money's really going. And this is where I've seen that there's been money going to different areas, different things, even in this pandemic. They're spending money on all this other stuff, but education and improving the qualified teachers, and want to put more work on them when they need to be rewarded, but on another hand also be given more resources to deliver the education that children are able to meet those marks, but in a less stressful way.
So Calippa said that the challenge is a lot of neurotypical teachers lack the imagination. It's not always even about the resources if you're creative enough. And I think that comes down again to curriculum, which is which is part of your petition, isn't it? To get that curriculum changed, because I get a lot of time my daughter will say, what do I need this for? And in fact, even myself as an adult, think back to when I was at school, and I think, what did I need half of that for? I think children are better at knowing what their interests are at a younger age these days. I think because of access to social media, they've got more of a clear understanding of what's available to them out there. And I think it would be better if there was more choice on the subjects that they, you know, I know you've got your core English, maths and science, but You
No,
know,
there should
those.
be a range. There should be a range, and it's so important because not every child is going to want to do a kind of, you could say, a general structured vision of ambition for their
Yeah.
future. And of course, there isn't enough within the theatre and the what I did experience from school, particularly. When it came to secondary, I found there was more options within drama. There was more options in those creative arts, but I can't even remember the last time that a school would really have proper musical instruments or proper
No.
singing lessons or something that, you know, makes you feel good and you end up feeling good after it. So I think it's so important. And even entrepreneur, anything that basically the child or the young person ambitious to do.
Sorry, Claude. I've just Cami has asked, can somebody please repeat in the chat what specific legislation or policy is being discussed? So if we just go back for those that have just joined, Claude, you're running a petition to the UK government at the moment called Claudes SEN Law. SEN standing for Special Educational Needs, to reform the curriculum within schools, and also to apply for additional funding for better resources for children, for neurodivergent children within schools. I think also education for the teachers as well. I think the education for the teachers, because they don't seem to understand ADHD. You know, the amount of times my daughter has teachers rolling her eyes at her, and even actually about her OCD. You know, they she has to do certain steps, certain repetitions, and you know, even on the autistic spectrum, even if it wasn't the OCD, you know, she's got a preliminary diagnosis of both. She said, yeah, I'm just coming. And the teacher said, no, come now, please. And she said, I can't, I'm just doing this and then I'm coming. And then she got told off for it. And it made no difference whether she took an extra 5 seconds or not. But they said, well, I told you to come now. And she said, well, I can't not do that. And they said, yes, you can. And she said, but I can't. No, but I can't. So do you understand OCD? Do you understand?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And their answer is, no, I don't. Well, then don't question what I'm doing. You know, have some respect. But there's very much there's very much that lack of respect of teachers to children, I think, on that understanding level as well, which I find sad, because there's quite a power complex sometimes from what I hear from the kids. Obviously, I know kids can personally. I think a lot of teachers have a power trip complex where they like to be in charge, and it's very much a dictatorship. You know, you will do what I say. There's no room for freedom of speech. There's no room for debating. And unfortunately, that doesn't work with my daughter, because she questions everything. And she's very good at debating.
May I add on? Because I think you're very right there. There's a lack of sympathy. Yes. And that word sympathy is such an important word. And this is where I feel that the government and teachers in those people in high powerful jobs, but also in teachers and work placements, there's that disconnect. And I think it is important that they have the understanding. So of course they have maybe a degree in uni where they are able to learn about neurodiversity. They are also able to be qualified. And because, for example, at my college placement in 2017, I was taught by a PE teacher for maths. And of course,
this happens a lot, yeah.
A lot, doesn't it? And what was crazy is of course, I struggled with maths. So for me to be taught by a PE teacher did not help me at all. But luckily, I was able to succeed and do well. But on the other hand, it was very difficult to kind of understand maths. And I'm still not that strong at it now. But it was lovely to hear another person who even had neurodiversity who said that she struggled with maths. So I didn't feel like I was dumb. I didn't feel like I was inadequate. it was a typical thing where you've got other people who find difficult with maths, and that is what my petition. It also says about teachers being qualified and having a degree, also having that option in uni where they are able to study it, and also about neurodiversity and how to teach, and also the importance of you could say, what's the word? I think it's more of the criteria of being inclusive for neurodiversity within the work placement. And also, I think it also says in there that it wants the acknowledgement of personal budget. Personal budget is an important factor in that the local authority don't feel that they can siphon off the money. So what the budget does is give the parents and family power to decide what their child needs, and also the young student what they need themselves within their education, how they will be delivered it, and they know where their money is going because they get given the money and they are the one who was in charge with using the money well for their education. Because over the years it's been the case that the local authority have felt this is what's applicable when it doesn't really meet for that person. And there's an important thing in the Family Act and also in the Human Rights Act, but also in the SEN Act as well, where it says that the child and the young student and family should be listened and their views should be heard. However, that hasn't happened. So this is where I think instead of repeat scenarios repeating again, and like, for example, even in the court systems, I think that should be reformed as well, because most of the decisions have not been for the parents or the families, and that's been an issue as well. So yeah, it talks about where they are supposed to be listened and they're supposed to be understood, and they should also be given the right guidelines of what help they have, and these things should be, of course, acknowledged, because for what you said for yourself, as a neurodiversity parent, you should know where to go to, who to call, who are the people to support, and who are the people that are there.
Absolutely, because at the end, I mean, if we look at where the original referral tends to come from, it tends to come from school. But what happens is school will say, I think your child might be on the autistic spectrum, or I think they may have ADHD, go to your doctors. So then you as a parent have to go to your doctors and then ask for a referral, and then they say, well, we need this from the school, and you end up very much as the middle person, and you're almost coordinating your own care for or your own care for your child, and no one's really giving you the information that you need. Everybody's passing the buck. I mean, I've even had that issue recently myself with my daughter being offered NVR. I've been offered NVR training, and I've got social services telling me CAMS have to provide it, and I've got CAMS telling me social services have to provide it. So I'm in the middle of when am I going to get this?
Move in the message. So there's that move in the message of who, very much.
Totally disconnected. It's really disconnected.
And speaking of that, I think it's quite funny because you said you got the advice from the social services, but unfortunately they can't even do their job that well, unfortunately, because you've had bad cases and bad reputation from them. And this is where I think what David Cameron did, where he made the education healthcare plan, when we had a thing before called a statement that was just strictly education, was a convenient plan to make education not be the topic and not be a topic of funding. And this is where it was unfortunate for the United Kingdom to have the coalition that we did and to have that leadership. It was not good because it made certain sectors fell very short and not have what the funding that they require, because it did. Education has now become a topic of something else. And it's brought in these other people just to try, like, for example, I've heard of other stories from other families they've got this SEN group on Facebook, and I've heard issues where the local authorities try to take the children away, they try to not provide education for them, and you're thinking how like serious, and it's awful to hear that these stories have come up because they don't want to pay for
I've
education.
heard it time and time again. It's
Mm.
really awful. I think if I don't know who's been on here since we started or who's joined. I've seen people coming on and off. But if we just go back to, obviously,
Yes.
if we talk about bullet points of what your petition is applying for. So because I'm going to share the link, obviously I'll share it to my story and I'll
Sure.
after this. But what is it that we're looking for? What is it that, you know, if we're talking definitively, obviously we could talk about all the different things that we want to change
Yes.
within the
The things
UK
that
educational
I'm
system.
calling for the UK government to change is, first and foremost, the curriculum in the way that it accommodates for neurodiversity, and that there is more funding within education. To also call for qualified teachers, and that they are able to have a understanding of neurodiversity students and young adults. To acknowledge the reform within DLD, because DLD, Disability Student Allowance, doesn't acknowledge hidden disabilities, and they are quite judgmental. And I've been stripped away from my DLD. But also, I think the importance of acknowledging neurodiversity within the policies of the work placements and education environments, and also the importance of personal budget and the acknowledgement of other people watching over the Senkos at the placements, and also the local authorities, and the importance of funding and delivery, and making the change that we don't have to talk about the same subjects again, that there is students that are happy, they feel catered for, they feel accommodated, and parents feel reassured that their child or the young person is being delivered an education. And the rest is on the SEN petition, which can be found at my Instagram. There are also some T-shirts as well that can be found on my socials as well. That says the Claudes SEN Law. And I will probably tag it in. Do you want me to tag it in the comments?
Yeah.
Information.
Yeah, be my guest.
So I'll put
How
the
many
hashtag.
signatures have you got? How many signatures have you got so far, Claude?
The signatures that I've got so far is 400, and the goal is to get 10,000 before the 10th of June.
Okay.
So I've got a social media storm going on at the moment on my page, and it's a hashtag Claudes SEN Law. And if everyone trends the Claudes SEN Law and gets the word out there, it would be much appreciated. Thank you to those who have supported. And it can be found on my page. And the goal is to get 10,000 before the 10th of June.
Okay, so we better get cracking then. Well, thank you so much, Claude, for coming on. And I'll share the link to your petition in my stories. I'm always happy to use my platform for good causes like this, and I really, really hope that you manage to reach 10,000 by June. And anything that I can do to help promote that, just let me know. I think it's a really good idea. Obviously, for those that don't know, you have to have 10,000 signatures before the government will review it. I think that's right, isn't it?
Yes,
they won't
right.
look at it unless you have. Yeah. So hopefully
everyone around the world, feel free to spread the word to all your UK friends, and feel free to even inform yourself as well.
Yeah, and if you know, as I said, I'll pop it on the story. If there's something that I can share in a post as well, I'm happy to do that. It's difficult to share in post because you can't include a link, but in my story, I can include a link straight to your petition, and hopefully try and spread the word. It takes 2 minutes, doesn't it, to sign it? So I'm really wish you the best of luck with this, Claude. As I said, anything that I can do to help, just let me know. And it's been really lovely talking to you and meeting with you today.
Likewise, thank you very much. And it
You're
was a
welcome.
pleasure. Thank you to all that joined as well.
Yes, thank you everybody who's popped on, popped off. I know it's difficult to stay focused when you've got two people talking. This is why I said if we mentioned that it was in the UK, so that none of my um, followers from abroad would, you know, get confused about what we're talking about. So, but I do have quite a large UK base of followers as well. So I'm hoping that we can get the word out to them and we can get this petition up and running. So thanks once again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And I'll probably speak to you soon. Okay,
Thank
take
you.
care, Claude. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.